So, good morning, everyone. Welcome. We are here to speak about how startups can work with the fourth largest economy in the world. Germany is home to some of the world's greatest industrial giants like Siemens, but also to thousands of Mittelstands, small family-owned businesses who are a model of efficiency and have, for a century and more, invested in engineering, built a lot of technology in-house, and today, with an ever-changing world, they have to understand how to partner, how to buy, how to work with smaller companies from very, very different backgrounds. And we have with us three representatives of German industry, Mr. Gisbert Rohl of Klöckner, Dr. Nazim Settin of Allianz, and Dr. Till Stenzel of Deutsche Telekom, and Hakan Koç, Esquire, the founder and CEO of AutoOne, I think is the highest valued German startup today. And maybe in just a couple of words, each one of you can tell us a little bit about yourselves, your organization, and how you interact with the new economy.
Yeah, my name is Gisbert Rohl in German, Raul Rühl. So I'm the CEO of Klöckner. Klöckner is a 110-year or more than 110-year-old steel company, so really a very old-fashioned company in a very old-fashioned industry, I have to say. And we started our digitalization efforts about 5 years ago. We, meanwhile, have two hubs here in Berlin. One is Klöckner.ai, where we have around 100 people, and another one is Xom Materials, where we employ 50 people. Klöckner.ai is the digital hub for Klöckner, and Xom Materials is a venture we launched last year. Both companies are developing platforms for the steel and metals industry. Klöckner.ai, the more proprietary platforms, and Xom Materials is an independent platform for the steel and metals industry, where we are currently in the first financing round to make this company more independent from Klöckner, finally.
So my name is Hakan Koç, co-founder and co-CEO of AutoOne Group. AutoOne Group is now 6.5 years old, was started in Berlin, solving two problems in the beginning. One was selling your car as a consumer, and at the same time sourcing for auto dealers. And this started in Germany with Wir kaufen ein Auto.de, which is a very popular brand here. And then we have rolled it out all over Western Europe in our purchase operations from Sweden to Denmark to France, Spain, Portugal, and so on and so on. And at the same time built our sales network on a pan-European scale. And after building this core value proposition for our two players of the market, we have started building more and more value-creating products for them, and have become, I guess, one of the biggest movers of cars also, as we also handle the logistics. In organization, we do more than 1 million car movements a year on trucks. Yeah, that's us.
So my name is Nazim Settin. I am the CEO of Allianz X. Allianz X is the digital investment unit of Allianz SE. Allianz is a global insurance provider and an asset manager. We have about 140,000 people worldwide, revenues of about $140 billion. And so what we try to do with Allianz X is what we'll be talking about in a minute, transforming and digitizing our old industry, which is focused on insurance and asset management.
Hi, Till Stenzel. I joined Deutsche Telekom Capital Partners, basically solving probably the problem that we're discussing today. They were looking for someone who had startup experience, investment experience, but also knew how big German corporates work. So I had kind of previously in my career touched on all of these aspects, and I was glad to then join DTCP. And I should say we are not Deutsche Telekom, we're Deutsche Telekom Capital Partners. We're majority partner-owned. Independent of Deutsche Telekom, but with Deutsche Telekom as our largest LP. So maybe small but important difference. So we keep our independence of Deutsche Telekom, but of course invest in areas that are close to Deutsche Telekom's core business.
Great. You know, 30 out of the 30 DAX 30 companies, only 4 were founded after World War II. German industry is very, very old school. And I'd like to ask you, what are the pitfalls that you see in your organizations when you're trying to work with startups? How do you get a 3-year-old company to work with a 150-year-old conglomerate with 140 billion of revenues? Nazim.
Look, Shmuel, what are the pitfalls? I have to say, let's start with the good side,
and
right?
Of course, at Allianz, it's all extremely easy.
Exactly.
There is no bureaucracy.
Everything is easy. No, you know, if you look at an insurance business, right, and if you look at the details of an insurance business, you know, most of the parties come from life insurance. So that means even disruption will not hit you immediately because life insurances have a long term. They have a long, you know, it's a contract that goes for 20, 30 years. So what I want to say is, if you would be hit today fully by disruption, you would still have a time to death of 30 years. And nobody would want to have your old contracts. And now what makes it with Allianz so special is, despite knowing that, so there's not an immediate urgency, the company is really willing to change and to transform. And that is really led from the very top by Oliver Bete. So that makes things easy. So it is something that we understand that we have to do today. So it's not an action out of urgency. It's an action that we take because we know it is going to happen slowly and we don't want to be hit by it. So that makes the things easy. Are there pitfalls? Of course there are pitfalls, but that's why we're there, to change it. And what are pitfalls? Pitfalls are, you know, as you said, like you have an organization that is 130 years old, that was doing business in a certain way. And some people have this thinking of saying, why do we need to change now? Things have been going well, and especially if you then report results as we did last week. So the best results in the past 10 years, net profits of 7.5 billion. People are like, why? What do we have to do? But that's something, you know, where you need to show them and really bring the people on your side.
Yeah, maybe I can just add. I mean,
you come from a younger company.
Yeah,
Deutsche Telekom is
a much
only
younger company.
80, 90 years old.
And we discussed before, and in this round, this is going to be under Chatham House rules, right? So we can speak openly here.
You see the camera in the back. I don't think it's the Chatham House rules, just to
so, of course, it's the challenge of, you know, Deutsche Telekom doesn't want to cannibalize their core business. At the same time, they want to advance with new technologies. And I think the corporate venture investment that Deutsche Telekom did for the last 20 years, you know, went really spectacularly wrong. And that is part of the reasons why they reorganized the venture investment at Deutsche Telekom so drastically and really brought the company out of the corporate to really create some distance here. So what we do is we invest primarily for financial motive, and only after we've done the investment, we try to bring this into Deutsche Telekom. So not to bring companies that, you know, might have somehow some initial contact with the company, but to say, look, this is best in class, this is a company that our venture team scouted, and they can really help Deutsche Telekom solve problems. And then it's up to the venture-backed company to bring this innovation into Deutsche Telekom. We can open the doors, we can place people in front of the right executives, but then it's up to the portfolio company to, you know, show the value there. And that's sort of the model that we are now pursuing at Deutsche Telekom.
Hakan, anything to say from the startup side? Not that Ottowan's already 4,000 people, so it's not exactly a strapping company, but...
So I think, I mean, for getting in touch with us will be a little easier, but also, of course, not instantly, like when you can meet someone at a conference. I think that's perhaps even the best occasion. But like in every case...
That's an open invitation for anyone who has business to pitch.
Sure.
To Ottowan's.
Hakan's
buying.
And I've been doing it all the time.
He's a charm to negotiate with.
Half your life you sell, the other half you buy, in that order. I think you need the right entry point, and that could be a relationship from the network, or that could be really an eye-opening product. But if you have that first entry point and people are friendly with you, they will guide you through the organization. And I think that should be the culture that you build, where you say, hey, even if, I don't know, in our department in B2B sales, where somebody is focused on onboarding new dealer partners of ours or keeping them happy, if somebody calls and says, I have the best online marketing tool and it will save you 30% and it's the best in the world and it's somehow credible, then don't just hang up and perhaps just say, you know what, I'm not responsible for this, But if you put it in writing or if you explain it to me, then I will direct it to person X that I personally know. And I think as long as you can keep that culture, then at least you don't miss the Ciscos of the world because the right person has heard it.
Mr. Roel, you manage a company that's a little less intuitive to innovate in, right? The real industrial business. But you've put it as a major part of your agenda as CEO. How do you go about it, and how can you bring innovation from outside into your business?
By the way, we had also no urgency really in our business 5 years ago when we started our efforts, but we saw this from the beginning as an opportunity because we are convinced that finally platforms will dominate more or less all industries in our point of view. And but the problem of a platform is that the platform moves itself finally between the company and the customers. And this makes a platform, of course, to a certain extent disruptive. And this is the problem also internally. And this is the reason why this disruptive innovations are so difficult for corporates. I mean, corporates are good typically in sustainable innovations. There is, of course, a difference between product and process innovations. Product innovations are easier because everyone likes them. Process innovations are also more difficult because typically companies like Klöckner are resistant to change. People don't want change, and when it's disruptive change, it's even more difficult. And this is the reason why I think that in this case it has to be driven also to, at least to a certain extent, by the CEO. When the CEO is not pushing it forward in a conservative environment, in a conservative company, then it doesn't work. And we're seeing this, by the way, also on the other side now, because with XOM, which is our venture, we onboarding traditional industries, and there we have the same. We have to approach the right people. We have to make sure, so even if they then onboarded, that they do digital business. Typically, they have no digital experience, and so on and so on. So you have to you have to be persistent. It takes time, and but in the end, I think the opportunities, especially in this traditional industries, are endless. Finally.
But I think that in recent years, German companies have learned to invest. I mean, a lot of them have investment programs, but do you think they're also learning to acquire? Do you see German companies becoming acquirers in the startup world?
This is difficult. I mean, so we have also a venture arm, and we, by the way, we acquiring only startups or participations in startups when they can contribute something to the platform, to our proprietary or to our XOM, to our independent platform. But there is, I think, the communication between traditional industries and startups is still difficult. It's more easier maybe when there is a digital hub in between, so that they speaking the right language. But when corporates working directly together with startups without this, for instance, what you have at Allianz or at Telekom, when they have to work directly, then it's still difficult.
So Nazim, your Allianz X is the exciting new kid on the block of venture in Germany, right? You've been extremely active over the last year since you joined. How do you see what you're doing impacting your organization? How can you drive Allianz from the investment side into the innovation that it needs?
Well, first of all, Shmuel, I have to tell how we work. So it's a little different than Telekom. So we are, as Allianz X, embedded into the Allianz organization. And before we invest into a company, there will be a connection between our operating entities or global lines with the company. So we will bring them into contact. We will start working out what is a potential that we can work on. And only if we come on both sides to a conclusion there is a fit, that's when we would invest. So,
but this is also new.
This is something that we always did. So there has to be a fit, otherwise we don't invest. So with all the investments that we've done, I mean, be it number 26, be it Laminate, be it C2F for American Well, all companies where an operating entity or global line of Allianz has a close link and a collaboration with these companies. And that's, you know, Shmuel, when you ask like, what do we bring in? So that's one of the parts. And the good thing is also a cultural exchange, right? I think culture is very important. So what happens is, if the startup or if the digital company is pushing the old industry into delivering what we have agreed on from the very beginning. And that's like how we bring the new tech, the new innovation, and also cultural change into the organization.
So Deutsche Telekom Capital Partners has been very active in Israel over the last few years as a partner, as an investor. And there are a lot of Israeli startups and investors in the audience. What do you find are the particular challenges for you as a German corporate to work in Israel? And forget the camera.
Sure. So I think our experience in Israel has been both as a student, we learn a lot, and I think we try to give some ideas back as well. I think the number one item is, you know, patience. The German corporates do take their time, so when you really want to work towards that contract, work towards that collaboration, don't expect a sort of American, you know, go-to mentality. It will take some time to convince the right people. It will also help if you have German language speakers in your team, or maybe even someone locally. German corporates, especially if you engage, say, in a reselling opportunity where telecom brings you to German Mittelstand clients, you know, they like having people in front of them that speak their language. And I think the other one is also, you know, don't assume that your counterparty is always completely native in what you're trying to tell them, what is new about your product. I would say software skills, these kind of skills, cloud thinking is something that is not native, certainly not to telecom and not to a lot of the Mittelstand clients that we work with. So you probably have to do a little bit of education as well, what value you can bring and what business problem you can address. So I think this is probably, you know, a lot of what we've seen is you know, the success factors of making a collaboration successful.
Great. Hakan, you launched Auto and FinTech last year, together with Allianz X and Deutsche Telekom, and Deutsche Bank, sorry. Very successful collaboration. Wasn't an easy one, but very interesting. Anything that you learned that you want to share?
No, I think what these institutions mean for the general public and what they are defending with their heart is trust and reputation. And that has an upside and a downside, of course. The upside is that you can inherit some of that trust that they have built because people know that they will follow their process. And also in financial topics, there's a general trust in big institutions like Deutsche Bank and Allianz. To give you an example, if you were to hold cryptocurrency, and we've seen a lot of news, would you give it to two guys who host the server in their bedroom and say, I put all my life savings on this server?
That's what I did.
Or would you say, I give it custodian to Allianz or Deutsche Bank? And I think naturally everybody will say, if it's with them, it's fine. And even something's wrong, they will come up with a solution. And if it's really wrong, someone will have it insured. And I think, especially in the context of financial services, you need the questionless trust in that these institutions know what they do. That's the upside. Now, the downside is in protecting this, and they have to protect it, they of course have different processes and also perhaps different needs. I can tell you from the discussions with Deutsche Bank and Allianz, the most important point in the shareholders' agreement, I think very openly here, is how do they get out if there is any reputational topic? And they don't care about any financial impact. So Allianz stands up and says, I
don't know if Nazim agrees to that.
No, of course. No, of course. I mean,
the financial impact part of it. Never mind.
But I think the large corporations say, we want to be able to sell, and then there is no counterparty. So I think it shows you that the highest goal is really, we need to be credible, and we can only stand as long behind it as we understand what is going on and we have the right governance. And of course, that turns extra loops because that is something that a startup like us has never thought about. Yeah? If something doesn't turn out as we think, yeah, then you write it off, or God knows, you sell it, but you never think about there needs to be a guaranteed way that we are not involved. And that thinking is very, very different to anything because you start to create value. Yeah? You have a very different mindset. When you start, everybody is excited. You talk to your operational entities and you say, this is what we're building, this is the management, this is the plan. But there's always one guy in the room who says, in rainy days, we need the following. And if you're a startup person, of course, you say, why did they bring this guy? I think it also ensures that the trust I mentioned in the beginning is not just a shell, but really something that we can all trust on. And therefore, you have to do the extra loop.
But I have to say, Hakan, I know you now since 3 years. And you're absolutely right that we protect the reputation that we have, that we try to do everything to avoid that anything happens. And in the last 3 years, you have changed, especially in regards to Auto One. So if I think about how you are acting today in protecting the trust, the reputation of Auto One, and how you were acting 3 years ago, there's a change, which is natural. And I'm sure like in 20 years, you will be doing the same thing we do. You will tell people in that agreement, I want to have a clause. If my reputation of Auto One is, for whatever reason, harmed, I want to get out. So I don't want a reputational damage. So I think this is maybe going back.
We will hire your guy.
You don't need to hire him. We have a standard clause.
Great. Thank you very much for a fascinating conversation and to be continued. Thank you.
Thank you.